Hearthstone Grandmasters, and this is the final match of the round robin for Asia Pacific. We are going to be heading to the playoffs bracket next week to find out who our fortunate player heading to the global finals will be. But right now, Gia, this is everything on the line for SamuelTsao. His final chance to turn things around after a disastrous season here in Hearthstone Grandmasters. He has one final chance to avoid relegation.
That's right. And it is pretty impressive that he managed to make it to this spot in the first place, given that he had that really, really bad start. As you said, in the Swiss portion, he he never got on stream in those first 3 weeks. And then as he was starting the round robin, it was loss after loss, but he finally managed to turn it around recently against Don, the other player that's in this story. If SamuelTsao wins, then Don is suddenly automatically relegated. SamuelTsao loses, that means Don is through to the relegation bracket instead and has another chance to stay in Grandmasters.
Exactly. Even though it is SamuelTsao versus Shaxy here, who will be his opponent in this match. For Shaxy, there is little on the line. He is guaranteed top 4, and all 4 of those spots are pretty much the same. I think even if he wins, he still ends up in 4th position as opposed to moving up to 3rd anyway. So it's just about trying to take the win for honor's sake and prove himself with his very unconventional lineup for this week. But as you said, the 2 players who are most invested in this match, SamuelTsao and Dawn. If SamuelTsao wins, Dawn is relegated. If SamuelTsao loses, he is relegated out. Just comes down to this final match.
Oh, yes, indeed. And it is Spice that he is bringing in this lineup. 5 chili pepper ratings from me. That is a combo priest, guys. This is not Galakrond priest. This is not Resurrect priest. This is Shaxy playing cards like Dark Prophecy, playing cards like High Priest Amet, and not generating them.
Right, and one thing that is very much worth mentioning, if any of you haven't been keeping up with the recent nerfs and changes to Priest, Priest has underwent a pretty fundamental change to the basic set of the class, where obviously historically, what Combo Priest meant was a deck where you stick high health minions and then kill your opponent with Divine Spirit to double their health and Inner Fire to make their attack equal that very high health value. Now, of course, Divine Spirit has been moved to the Hall of Fame, no longer playable in Standard. So Shaxy here is going with a similar kind of strategy, it must be said, but instead going with other more board-oriented routes, I think it's fair to say, with cards like Psych Split primarily, or Psyche Split, if you want to go that way, in order to try and lock down the board and get these incredibly powerful mid-game plays.
That's right. Even though you can't necessarily go for a one-turn kill by just sticking one minion, what the priest can still do is just go for mid-range boards that are very difficult to remove. And if we're seeing from Warrior that Warmaul Challenger is one of the best cards in the meta, very difficult to answer for even Demon Hunters with its high health total, then maybe it's a similar story for Priest, but it still remains to be seen whether Priest can even stick that first minion at Liberty, because the deck is quite slow and not running the removal that Galakrond Priest might, for example.
And that is the biggest similarity to the old school Combo Priest. You may remember it from the previous season of Grandmasters or from the previous couple of Masters tours that we had as well, where with this deck, if it loses board control, the game ends. Even if that's on turn 1, the game simply ends on the spot because you have no way to wrestle it back at all. We will have to wait a little bit before we see that deck from Shaxy, if at all, depending on how poorly this goes for him. But to start things off, Gia, a matchup we have seen quite a few times so far, and one that, outside of today's matches, specifically between Alutemu and Rivius, we were thinking is starting to skew pretty hard towards the Demon Hunter's favor.
That's right, but today, yet again, I am learning new things. As you mentioned, both Alutemu on their first attempts versus Demon Hunter managed to get the win as Warlock, and it was very much due to heads-up recognition of when the timing for their removal should be played out. And for Shaxy here, already the keep of Dark Skies, definitely an important one in the matchup, but keeping Sense Demons is pretty cool to see too.
SamuelTsao, however, shake of his head even just after the starting mulligan. The 1-drop, however, is so crucial here at helping him smooth out this curve and get that early damage through.
That is correct. Oh, Frenzied Fellwing is available to be played here, just with Hero Power Face and the attack from the Blazing Battle Mage. Definitely prefer that over the Spectral Sight.
I agree as well. Just being able to get in the 1 extra damage is a nice benefit as well. You always start with the attack with the Battle Mage as well, because that's happening either way. But like you say, Spectral Sight on turn 3, there's a decent chance that you get a 1-drop to fill out the curve as well. And getting in this damage in the super early game before Dark Skies can come down on 3 is a big difference maker in the matchup.
Right, and we see again here from Shaxy a point that you pointed out from Rivius, where instead of going Explorer, which gets on board and can potentially stave off some damage, we see a tap from Shaxy, and I think this is largely due to the fact that he wants to go for Dark Skies in the near future, but now the Sense Demons is very likely to get Arenaces, guaranteed to get at least one, in fact.
Yeah, he would be looking at, okay, not Overdraw if he did go for it, but I think for this turn, you're looking at some kind of removal. I would rather follow up. Okay, I guess I'm wrong with the Sense Demons thereafter, because Moarg plus Coil seemed like a decent way to clear the board, or just Dark Skies in order to obliterate it away.
I mean, this looks greedy at first, but Shaxy hit the best outcome of 8 heal. The other outcome is the 4 heal, and not disastrous, honestly, because if he's looking at SamuelTsao just redeveloping another minion going into turn 3, the most additional health is 4, I suppose, from the 5 from Kayn, but more likely 3 to 4 from either Frozen Shadow Weaver or Satyr Overseer plus Hero Power, all of which can still be cleared off by the Dark Skies follow-up. It's greedy, but you know what? I'm kind of coming around to this style of play in the matchup.
I'm definitely willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. I still think there was a consideration for Coil there, and then you can follow up with Dark Skies if you need to clear the board, or the play of Sense Demons into Soulfire if you absolutely need it cleared. But it's an interesting way to approach the matchup, make no mistake. And working out quite well for Shaxy so far.
I think ideally for Shaxy, you would have wanted to see more development on this turn.
Yeah.
But now because SamuelTsao just went for more, Shaxy is thinking this Dark Skies could still get better. And wow, he is just not removing at all until he sees premium targets. This to me was a little bit sketchy. I was looking at Dark Skies coin questing, that puts him ahead on board, but using the coin, of course, is a bit painful if it's not curving you into the Abyssal Summoner.
One thing that I will say is very consistent between both Shaxy's approach and Rivius's approach earlier on today is realizing the power of getting those Brood Mothers and then shuffling your hand thereafter. Because you're it's not like you're just getting the heal that you would get at a later point anyway. By drawing them then early and then going for the shuffling next turn, he's kind of creating even more heal than would exist otherwise out of nothing. Which is, in a way, often equal to removal as long as you have the board clears at a later point. And even though he missed the Brood Mothers here, Shaxy still has a ridiculous amount of healing in the coming turns.
Very true, both Nether Breath in the hand now. He's only running 1 Sense Demons compared to the list from Glory. Could naturally draw into the Brood Mothers later on. What we haven't talked about so much is how difficult this turn is for SamuelTsao. The hand is really awkward. If he wanted to go for the Satyr over there, it is walking into more Rain of Fire territory and Dark Skies. Ultimately, Sam is choosing to go for the second tempo Glavebound we've seen of the day.
Yeah, I think what this really says to me is it is a play around Crazed Netherwing, because if he goes for the Satyr Overseer Hero Power, it is so disastrous for him. Obviously, against Warlock, there are so many different ways that they can do damage in the early game. They've got 1 damage with Mortal Coil, 2 damage with like Moarg, Rain of Fire, Dark Skies to clear off anything. There's no way to play around all the different removal. And I think SamuelTsao had a clear strategy behind his game plan here. But obviously, with a full hand, Shaxy's gonna have the answer.
And it was the perfect answer as well. 3-card combo to get him cycle, heal, and ahead on board. SamuelTsao really has to go back to the drawing board now. And if he wants to, he could go for another Glavebound just to clear off this Moarg. But it's seeming to me that he's fallen so far behind that I'm already looking for niche, altruist game plans. Problem is, the skull is stuck in the middle.
It's just the worst. It's one of the worst hands for this point in the game I've seen in quite a while, I must say.
Yeah. if he wants to free up the skull, it either means playing Altruist first, which defeats the point of saving cards in the first place, and then if not that, he's got to get through all of these 3-drops, and the Satyrs are almost certainly dying to AoE at this point.
And I think now for Shaxy, you do need to be somewhat greedy with your removal in this matchup. You can't just be throwing it down for killing off every minion every turn, because you will run out. There's not that much in the deck. But at the same time, just throwing down an Abyssal Summoner here is really, really scary. There are multiple ways they can clear it off and then get the damage with this Glavebound to go face, be it Warglaves or, of course, Kayn itself to just bypass the taunt.
I would argue it is not that scary. I will agree that it's greedy, but it is going to go up to 8 health, which means that if there's going to be a Warglaive swinging in twice, then SamuelTsao is taking 16. And,
Fair point.
And that would also take up the majority of his turn, at which point he still ends up with a 2-2 in many cases, and then the heal for follow-up on the next turn. But this is overall safer from Shaxy, and of course quest completion is the big reasoning for just going for this line of play here.
The big kicker for sure. Moarg Artificer. I think he could probably have got away with throwing down there, given that he's used both Nether Breaths, but again, having said that, the Rain of Fire combo with it is pretty nice.
But Coin is the best card in the deck! Alright, I got the reasoning though. It shuts off the Coin Twisting Nether, but against Demon Hunter with both Glaive Bounds used, our Moarg Rain of Fire is pretty much Twisting Nether.
And I mean, when I said that Coin was the best card in the deck, I was referring to the mirror, where it is the best card in the deck then.
So Sam can just dump some 3-drops. It's so ugly.
The thing is, like, obviously he wants to keep playing around Netherwing, which, you know, I understood his reasoning earlier to go for the Glavebound because it was so bad against Crazed Netherwing, but it's very clearly entering the territory where if he has it, it's bad for you, and that's going to be the case for the rest of the game. So I think you just bite the bullet and start playing them out now.
Yeah, he's got to free up the skull somehow. But even looking far into the future, if he manages to safely get to an active skull and save up for a big blowout, there's both Glaive Bounds used already.
I mean, I will say that I think I probably would have gone for the second Frozen Shadow Weaver there instead of the second Overseer, because I think this is, you know, again, I did make the point of if he has it, and it's bad, but you can at least mitigate how bad that is somewhat and save the second Overseer to maybe go with your Warglaves a little bit later on.
Yep. But Shaxy's got a heck of a turn. Look at this, the Moarg discounted to 0 can now be played with Rain of Fire, and then the Abyssal Summoner on top of all of that.
Oh, that's true, actually, yeah.
Amazing swing.
I was looking at Crazed Netherwing tap, which still has its merits because you do want to fit in the tap wherever possible, but your plan does put a huge amount of stats on it.
I guess the downside is that it leaves a 2-2 Moarg on the board, so the huge amount of stats is negated by an I-Beam doubled. But I don't know, Shaxy's tapping forces him to eventually dump cards anyway.
Yeah.
As far as the cards you really want to discount to 0, there's of course all of the dragons, which are still in the deck aside from Dragon Queen Alexstrasza and the Aranasius, so that could be a pretty unfortunate to see the Soulfire here, but we do see Shaxy just throw out the Moarg anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing for Shaxy is another good card to tap into, or at least to draw into, would just be Plot Twist to get these fairly expensive cards back in his deck. And start drawing the Abyssal Summoners for 0, find the Aranasi Broodmothers to heal up again. Because while it is looking very good for Shaxy at this point, I will say, I don't think SamuelTsao is out 100% yet.
Agreed. There is potential to free up the skull, at least get rid of a fair amount of cards, but it floats a lot of mana, because he's not able to play the skull on the same turn. He was reaching for the I was wondering if this is a front-load Metamorphosis type game plan. He could also freeze a minion with that.
Yeah, because the problem with this game plan is he can go 4 activations here, which I suppose does allow him to clear the board technically with the Frozen Shadow Weaver as well. But it still means you're a turn away from playing Skull of Gul'dan, and he could have, like you said, just gone Metamorphosis into the Netherwing, or just Metamorphosis face.
Well, that's some heal for Shaxy. That's an active Zephyrus as well.
Wow.
Oh, man.
So, if nothing else, we got Zephyrus Shadow Flame in order to clear up this board, but there is almost certainly something better here.
Yep. It is not very high tempo, to be honest. So he's used the Moarg, so the Moarg Rain of Fire option is not available alongside a big development turn. Shaxy just has first world problems. My cards are too good.
Yeah, I mean,
we're going Zephyrus Voidwalker here.
There was the potential there if you wanted tempo to go for a play of Dark Sky's Zephyrus Edwin, just to get stats on the board. But I think for Shaxy here, if you just kind of keep playing it out, this, as long as nothing crazy happens, he will win. Saving the Zephyrus for heal, I think, is probably more consistent.
As far as the crazy things that can happen, though, Shaxy's seen it. He's seen the Altruist. He's seen both glaive bounds, so now he just has to be worried about War Glaives and Metamorphosis, which, to be fair, is quite a lot, and that's why we're seeing him hold back a bit.
It's very, very scary. But of course, Zephyrus also offers the Weapon Destruction, which can be the equivalent of a huge amount of healing.
So SamuelTsao is met with this problem where if he wants to unlock the skull from the right side, he's not actually presented with an I-beam target this turn. You can reasonably assume that Shaxy will play something on the next turn. But I'm looking at just playing Metamorphosis.
I guess at this point, when you're this far down, you're not playing Skull for unoutcasted version, because if you were going to do that, it would have been right to do it so long ago at this point.
SamuelTsao's list is not playing Volpera Scoundrel, so there's no room to discover wins here. Gonna have to come from his natural first other Warglaves, but wow, what a top deck. Oh my, have both Yseras! Aw man, it sucks, he has no hand space.
Oh my god.
You just jam them both.
He does that, right? He just plays both, and then he can get the extra generated card. He's...
You're right. I was joking.
This is the dream, Gia, with both Yseras.
Yes.
I think that was a Warcraft
And the
joke.
nightmare, depending on what he generates. SamuelTsao nightmare, in fact.
Okay, so the reason to hold back the other Ysera here is, of course, Zephyrus becomes inactive because of the portals if he doesn't play it.
Right.
So he is considering here holding on to it to go for Bloodlust, Inner Fire, Wind Fury, whatever. You know, the lethal out on the following turn. Because if he does play them all out, it's potentially less damage overall.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, especially if all of the dragons come downside, then he's board locked. And he can't actually play down, say, a Malagos from the tap for lethal. So it's actually very heads up from Shaxy. That could have been the one way he lost, strangely enough.
This is something that Odemian, the Belgian Hearthstone player, was having a big go at us here, or missing out on yesterday, was not seeing the obvious fact that Zephyrus does not become active once the portals are in the deck. But this time we got it all right, so you can stop complaining.
Man, he can't even play the Glaives here. Just not getting there. Plus, most of Sam's draws are just these cards, very low value.
Yeah.
And while he didn't admirably close to lethal, Shaxy's got the Zephyrus for healing.
Okay, kind of a sad card to burn there. But by holding back on the Ysera, having the Zephyrus still active, Shaxy has the ability to just heal well without range.
There's some strange lethal opportunity here by dreaming your Zephyrus. I think Zephyrus should give Wind Fury in this situation, among other options. And then, or Inner Fire, in fact, for Ysera.
Okay.
So if you go Zephyrus, it should give Wind Fury first because you have an 8/8 that can attack. So that's 16.
Okay.
And then you can Dream it, and then Ysera Inner Fire for 12. I don't know if it gives Inner Fire if it's not, and then the Soul Fire would have been the rest. But I've said a lot of maybes here, far too many for my comfort, so I don't mind that Shaxy's gone for... Whoa.
0 mana Malagos as well?
Wait a second. Wait. Shaxy didn't even heal this turn.
This gives outs all of a sudden to SamuelTsao, right?
Yeah, Kayn.
There's only
the big
one taunt in the way.
That was kind of a disaster for Shaxy. I was thinking if it's not lethal, at least take Zephyrus for healing.
Just heal, right? Radiance alone just makes you 100% safe.
Uh-huh. But Samuel's not got the answer here. He can free up Skull from the right side. Mana burn. But I don't think there's any damage anymore. Even with Kayn.
Right.
Either way you look at it, he has to draw. So he has to free up the Skull from the right side.
Fires of vengeance burn bright.
Only 2 mana left over, so he can't even go like Kayn plus the Glavebound or anything like that. I mean, he hasn't got any left.
Right. Are we missing some Chaos Strikes?
Not enough
the
to change the
concede,
game.
though.
SamuelTsao throws it down, and even though Shaxy had a very clear game plan by holding back the Ysera, going for the Zephyrus, I think he maybe miscounted a little bit there at the end in terms of blocking out any chance for SamuelTsao to take the game. As just slight correction to myself, it was in fact Maverick I was thinking of who had a go at us for the Zephyrus out there. So you're welcome this time, buddy. We spotted it, even if it was a bit messy at the end.
Yep. I did think that doesn't seem like something a demon would do. Like go on Twitter rants towards casters, but...
I misspoke.
Yeah. In any case, though, I do appreciate people who hold us accountable because we also have a responsibility of knowing how these cards work. And I am a little bit worried for Shaxy there, honestly, because he did, despite him taking the win, it seemed super shaky at the end there. I feel even a couple turns towards the end, he was taking taps where he didn't necessarily need to. I thought there were opportunities where he could take tempo instead and just try and end the game before SamuelTsao could even hope to put together some crazy skull lethal.
What I will say is that even... with the cards that were left, it's possible that there wasn't a chance to deliver lethal with only the one attack Umberwing in play. But what I will say is that I don't think that Shaxy was thinking that as he made the play. I think it was maybe just a slight miscalculation in terms of the amount of heal that he had available. Maybe he was tunnel visioning down the lines you were saying of, trying to find lethal with Zephyrus, and he spent most of his turn trying to think about that. And so in the end, just ended up going with the other line of the Abyssal Summoner. But either way, the Warlock taking a win against the Demon Hunter. We've seen it go time and time again. And even if the end was a little bit weird, the beginning, I think, for Shaxy was very indicative of this approach that we're seeing from a lot of the very, very best players with this deck of being very cavalier with your health total in the early game.
Yes, indeed. But all of that aside, we're gonna see the Priest. This is it, Dark. We've been talking about this all weekend. Didn't do much testing because I want to see Shaxy prove to us just how this deck works.
So, quite clearly, I think you are looking for a little bit more early game action than this. I believe, unless I'm mistaken, taking a look at the list, the only one drop that he actually has access to is the Imprisoned Homunculus. Yeah, exactly, which doesn't even become active for 2 turns. So I guess this is not disastrous for him at the start if he can find something to go along with it. Yeah. But I will say, with the curve from SamuelTsao, he is looking to be very easily able to kill off anything Shaxy throws down.
Yep. It also hurts to miss a 2-drop here for Shaxy. He's playing double Injured Veers and the one Coulter on Chaplain, which even without a Battle Cry, you would much rather get something on the board because, as we said, just like any combo Priest, the second you fall behind, the game just snowballs into oblivion because all of the cards rely on something sticking.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth mentioning as well that the other big difference... Oh, that is another pretty miserable draw. Going for the Dark Prophecy here for a decent Armani Berserker, I think it's fair to say, just for the highest health. But the other big difference with this deck compared to the pre-rotation version is the loss of Northshire Cleric as well. There is basically no draw in the entire deck now, which was one of the biggest chances to just destroy a matchup, was drawing 1 million cards off of Cleric.
Very true, especially when you can pair the Wild Pyro alongside that and clear up. But now, SamuelTsao has frozen this Ambani Berserker. That gives Shaxy a target to copy with his Faceless Rager.
That's true.
It's still quite slow.
So, Faceless Rager, and he could even Inner Rage if he wants to just spend the mana on this turn.
Sure, Inner Fire.
Inner Fire, sorry, yeah.
Power Infusion is actually in his deck, guys. So, by that logic, no, surely it's not the pick here, right? It's too slow. Everything is expensive. I'm looking at just taking a Lackey to help him clean up the board a little bit. I mean, you could silence your freeze mid could attack, but then the Amani loses its 3 health buff from the Dark Prophecy.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a consideration just if you want to lock down the board, because you could go Faceless Rager first, then silence it and trade in, and then you've still got a decent hold on the board, and you're killing off some of his minions.
Alright. Or you just hold the silence on together. I'm not sure what Demon Hunter minions you really want to silence aside from Battle Fiend.
But now it's got to be said, SamuelTsao is looking at power plays coming through. Glavebound into Glavebound available on these next 2 turns. And I think the only real consideration is how you meter out the damage.
I think it's very considerate for SamuelTsao to be going for the board clear here. Well considered, I should say.
Oh, yes.
Those are not the same words. Just removing every threat from Combo Priest is how you win the matchup.
Yep.
They don't get payoff if you don't give them a target for Psyche Split or Inner Fire.
Obviously, with this version of the deck, there is a little bit of get-out-of-jail-free cardness, if that is an adjective we can describe. With Sethic Veil Weaver, you know, he could generate Holy Nova. Renew, of course, also could get him something to clear off the board here, or at least some of it. But without that, honestly, I think he's just going to be getting value traded until he loses the game.
It's just mind-blowing to me how this deck can find so much room for buff spells, but none of those spells are Apotheosis.
It's true, actually, yeah. I guess if your plan is to never be behind or you're losing anyway, +2, +3 is not quite good enough.
Yeah, still not largely relevant in this scenario. But Shaxy's got to find some way to stave off the damage. I'm looking at the Sethic now. Just to silence something, that's at least a spell that targets a minion, keeps the train going. Dark Prophecy in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only card that does anything at all here, so I think you do take it.
I mean, you could go Sethic Pain on the 1/1. Sounds terrible.
That does sound terrible. Okay.
If he had 1 more mana, he could have gone like Sethic Natural Inner Fire into Pain to get rid of the Shadow Weaver, but it didn't quite fit.
Written Words can keep the cycle going on the Sethic Veil Weaver, but I've got to be honest, Gia, this is kind of just how I imagined the matchup going.
Yeah.
With Demon Hunter getting on board very quickly, having fantastic removal options, obviously, with all the weapons, Glavebound, and damage buffs on their hero. And then the Priest just gets value traded until they die.
Yeah, I don't think this is any big surprise at all. I'm still trying to wrap my head around where Shaxy's idea to bring this Priest came from in the first place. In theory, if we're to treat this as combo priests of old, it would be favored against Druid, for example.
I can definitely see that being the case.
But as far as against Warrior, which runs a lot of weapons, against Demon Hunter, and I don't know, maybe this has a shot versus Rogue. I could see that. But it's definitely not Demon Hunter that you want to be matching up this Priest against.
Right. It's kind of funny. If he went for Shadow Madness on the 1-1 and then got Silence, it would almost be a good board clear. But, of course, it would then just go straight back to SamuelTsao side.
I wonder.
But I would love to see that. I'll say that.
That would be a top 1 moment right there. So are we just looking at Hero Power Forbidden Words now?
I mean, I'll be honest, I see no avenue to victory left for Shaxy. Maybe there's something I'm missing. He's obviously played this deck more than me, I assume, because he's played more than 0 games.
I was gonna make the joke if you weren't. But, yeah. Come down. Chaos Strike can keep cycling. Shaxy
12,
has
14, 16. It's just close to lethal right now, to be honest. I think it's 1 off.
Yeah. Completely correct. So if you're SamuelTsao, maybe you just clear off the Sethic to prevent any shenanigans.
Yeah, the
And
best...
there's an argument to keeping Kayn to go through a taunt and
True.
not letting it be cleared on board.
I mean, the biggest clear that you're looking at is Soul Mirror that could have been generated potentially, which you maybe need to play around. But with the amount of burst available and the lack of any real healing, now that both copies of Renew have been played, I just don't think, as long as you're not doing something completely ridiculous here for SamuelTsao, you should be winning. Just clear the board and you win.
Yeah. Even if we see 1 Twin Slice expended alongside Kayn, and Kayn going face, then that still plays around Soul Mirror because Kayn would survive.
Yeah.
In the shadows.
What am I watching, Derek? What is this deck?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think SamuelTsao maybe is now thinking Soul Mirror as the potential out. Or maybe generated Holy Nova into Breath of the Infinite as like the 2 generated cards. But I mean, even that, you know, it's incredibly niche scenarios here, and SamuelTsao has just won the game.
It is super niche, but you have to forgive SamuelTsao for stressing out about it because any little percentage advantage he can give him matters exponentially because this is his match to stay in GM potentially.
That's right, everything on the line. And when you're playing against a deck, which I have to imagine, at least before he saw the lists get released, SamuelTsao would have played probably 0 games against. Again, that is no comment on SamuelTsao. I don't think anyone in GM, apart from Shaxy, will have played any real games against that deck, just because we just haven't really seen it at all so far. But taking the win against it has got to feel good, even if it was just with the Demon Hunter, which feels like the easiest of the wins. The Druid, however, remaining for SamuelTsao, that I think is going to be the most crucial victory for him to take. If he can get that, I think he's looking in a very good spot to stay in Grandmasters.
Yes, indeed. This Demon Hunter from Shaxy, I very much expect to get a win in the near future, but I think SamuelTsao's best shot is at sweeping this Priest, and if our theory of Combo Priest versus Quest Druid being similar to Shaxy Priest versus Spell Druid holds true, then that could be the sticking point for SamuelTsao, as you said.
Druid, of course, has the chance to make an upset against anything, but first of all, SamuelTsao is going with the good old Highlander Hunter, and has got himself, if we just want to look at a base level, a pretty good curve to start things off.
Yeah, the 1, 2, 3, pretty decent in and of itself. Diving Griffin, you are the defensive player, I think is fine, because it tends to 1-for-1 a minion and also just draw you into, in this case, specifically Zexor, because Corruptor's already in hand.
That's right.
Expecting just a Chaos Strike here?
I think so. I think the Sightless Watcher on 4 makes a good amount of sense after you go for the Shadow Weaver on 3, most likely, because then you can give yourself likely a good draw on turn 5, hopefully the Glavebound or... sorry, the Warglaives, or now a Twin Slice to go with the Glavebound.
Yep. Ooh, Animal Companion for SamuelTsao now. Saves him from having to sadly play the
Yeah.
Griffin. Actually, it wasn't even that sad because he coins Griffin into Zixor. Close though. This is obviously great if he hits Misha, and decent if he hits Leok, but hovers the disaster outcome for once.
Yeah. I think it's okay. I think there's a decent chance that your opponent does develop something here in order for you to trade the Griffin into. And even if they don't, you can just play it as a 3-mana 4/1. At the very least, it's going to eat up some mana from your opponent to kill off.
I agree. It's definitely better to hold on to the Griffin responding to the expected 3 drops, be it a Satyr Over or the Frozen Shadow Weaver, and then front load the Animal Companion against what looks to be a better trade against the minion already on board.
Demons. Demons.
So for Shaxy, I think the basic play I'm looking at is just freezing the Leok so it can't take a value trade over the 2/2, and then score 3 theoretically lines up against Leok. But because he saw the coin into a 3 drop, be expecting another 3 on the backswing, be it Griffin or Stormhammer, which if you don't freeze face, can kill the Frozen Shadow Weaver.
Yeah, I mean, there are many 3-drops in the hand deck. It's very difficult to play around all of them effectively. So I think just going with the more obvious play of freezing this so that you can hopefully get a value trade makes sense.
SamuelTsao is staying, I would say, even ahead in this situation.
Yeah. He's looking very strong. I think it's going to hinge around whether or not he can stick a good Faceless Corruptor on 5, as it currently stands for me. And if he can do that, I would put him quite far in the lead.
None of these are Twin Slice, and that's what Shaxy really wants next turn.
Yeah, Kayn does fill out his mana the best because he could go for Kayn Hero Power, I suppose. Battlefiend could be used with just Altruis on the following turn for a 1 damage sweep.
That seems sketchy to me. I would be inclined to go for Kayn as well.
The fires of vengeance burn bright.
Alright, looks like Shaxy's gonna soften up Leok a little bit with his face. I like that a lot, especially if he's expecting to hero power again next. Wait, this trade looks... okay.
Yeah.
That was about to look very strange to me.
Yeah, I could then get both of them done with very, very easily, but that top deck is interesting.
It's
I
on
guess
curve, but...
yeah, it's probably just better than the other two, right? Zixor goes to a 2/1 and does effectively the same effect, whereas this is much more difficult to kill by the two drops on board. And again, I think what that does is lead more likely into the Faceless Corruptor on the following turn.
Make a good point about the Corruptor. I was also just looking at A-Wing plus value trade here, but that does just die from what SamuelTsao can already see, which is just trade and hero power.
Yeah.
It's very close.
By moon and spear.
Warglaives would be a bit disastrous either way.
Yeah.
I ultimately like what SamuelTsao went for, but gonna get the bad news that the Kayn is really good here.
Yeah, it is absolutely huge. All of a sudden, SamuelTsao's plays are looking significantly weaker. Not disastrous at all. You know, he can develop onto the board and put himself in a reasonable situation with probably Zixor value trade the 2/2 to not be vulnerable to hero power. And then Ooze.
Oh, it feels bad to play Ooze just as a 3/2 here, but
It does.
the alternative is a Faceless on its own. Everything
you
looks
can make
terrible.
I think you can make the decent read that they don't have the Warglaives in hand, or they probably would have thrown that down instead of the Altruis. Sorry, the Kayn, right? Just to clear off the board.
That's fair. Always the threat of it coming off the top, but SamuelTsao, I think, realizes that his game plan is just stay alive, and if he manages to land the Alexstrasza, then he's far in the lead.
I also much prefer the value trade on the 2/2 again, because otherwise you are walking so cleanly into hero power glaive bound.
Yes. That's Small things like that, very indicative of good understanding in the matchup.
Thanks, Gia.
Sometimes I'm nice. Oh, holds the ooze all together. But
Yeah.
that trade now puts Shaxy far in the lead.
And the ramifications start to become pretty huge, because if he'd gone for it the other way round, we were potentially looking at either Kayn trading in or the damage going into the minion. If Kayn trades in, then you have a 50% chance to hit the Glaive Bound with the Dragonbane instead of a 33% as we're looking at now.
Desert Spear is normally so impactful in the matchup, but it's come that little bit too late. It would
Yeah.
take a turn of setup to get that big payoff with Faceless Corruptor. And quite frankly, Sam does not have the time. Gotta take the 1 and 3 as far as I see it.
What is the follow-up then? I guess Ooze plus Faceless Corruptor does still allow you to play it and start swinging back the board. Yeah, I think I agree with you.
Or even just 3+4. The big thing is
Yeah.
SamuelTsao needs to remove the Glaive Bound.
Right.
If that goes face again, he's almost certainly dead. The only healing in the deck is from Zephyrus.
I absolutely agree with you. It's Dragonbane time. Unlikely to win, but the best shot he's got.
Burn. Dun, dun. I love the sound effects, but where will it land? Oh!
And if he had any other hand that could maybe be good, because he could go for Unleash the Hounds plus Kill Command, but for SamuelTsao, clearly that was the worst outcome, and just look at this poor man. Already looks completely defeated.
You shouldn't feel that way. Shaxy has a priest left. You can do it, Sam. But this does look disastrous for this game. We see an Umberwing Glaive-bound turn available for Shaxy.
And I think as well, to be honest, SamuelTsao will have done a little bit of testing, and I'm sure his hunch would have been the same as us, that Druid is not going to function very well at all against that Priest deck. And I imagine if he's done any testing, if our hypothesis is correct, his suspicions will have been confirmed.
From Shaxy here, I just want to see him get rid of the Dragonbane and not face tank it. I think the only way he loses now is if this Dragonbane manages another hit to the face with some Zephyrus out. So I'm thinking he trades the 2-2, Glaive bounds it down. Oh. Okay, take the trade, sure. That's clean as well.
Yeah. Functionally the same thing. He's not dying to any combination of cards from SamuelTsao.
Yeah, even if we saw Unleash Kill Command here, that'd be a little bit short.
SamuelTsao trying to find anything that keeps him alive. But there is obviously absolutely nothing. 2-1 up to Shaxy now. This is Gia, the final loss that SamuelTsao is allowed to take. If he loses this next game, or if he wins and then loses, he is out of Hearthstone Grandmasters. And I'm sure, as tense as SamuelTsao is feeling, as defeated as he looked there, Dawn waiting in the wings has got to be looking on. I can't even imagine how he can watch. Maybe it's too tense for him to even watch, but it just absolutely decides his fate as well as SamuelTsao's.
Yeah, imagine being Dawn here. Just nothing you can do but observe how your fate unfolds and whether SamuelTsao seal it or not. But now Shaxy has 2 more shots on this Priest. Just needs 1 win to prove that we have been too harsh on this deck, but TBH, Derek, I think it's garbage.
It's a 1 game we've seen so far with it, Gia. I'm not going to go so far as to call it garbage. I'll say I love it. I like that Shaxy's doing what he does best and going with the classic Mad Genius routine. I think this matchup is going to be the hard one, and I think next matchup, if SamuelTsao can take this, is potentially where Shaxy takes the win with this weird as all heck deck.
Yeah, it could just shine against Druid if it misses 1 piece of removal suddenly. Shaxy could be creating the tallest minions imaginable. And even against Hunter, he's got a pretty good opener. Both 12 years into Dark Prophecy, that's a curve.
It's a pretty good curve. Power Word Shield as well. That is a far cry from its former self, but in this instance, it's probably better. You'd gladly forego a card here just to lock down this health total.
It's so relevant against SamuelTsau's development, though, of likely just Fairy Dragon. Because now, Shaxy doesn't have to waste time hero powering to take the value trade. He just develops another. Ooh! Never mind!
Ooh.
That's gotta be the play, right? Sethic Shield.
There's no circle of healing in the deck, so there's no high roll that he can get there on the Tol'Vir, so I think I agree. You're looking at the generation here, and even if this doesn't run away at the start, he's going to get so many cards.
For Sam. Okay, Zixor is a good start to help him respond against the Tol'Vir. It kind of means that he's locked into Desert Spear over Animal Companion on the following turn, because I think priority is make sure that he has the spear going into the Faceless Corruptor turn.
And, I mean, I think very possibly there you go for Desert Spear now. It's not a huge difference either way, because they both have an immediate effect, be it the rush or the weapon attack straight away.
Yep.
What I will say, however, is that this is, while a good start for Shaxy, just an insane mid-game for SamuelTsao. Spear into Corruptor, I think, has to be the absolute stone-cold nuts in this matchup.
Completely agreed. And I actually think Spear, looking back on it, is better this turn, because if you had gone for 6 Zixor and it gets cleared off, which is pretty likely because Shaxy could have just taken a trade there, suddenly just the Spear is not enough to take down the Sethic. This way, Shaxy needs to buff up the health of the Sethic for it to not die to Spear plus Zixor.
But very importantly now, Gio, we are looking at a Psychopomp in hand. The only minion that has died is an injured Tol'Vir, and there is no way at the moment to kill both of these minions. This is going to be Psychopomp resurrecting a 2/6 with Reborn.
That is absolutely crazy. And Shaxy, with the taunt there, protects his Sethic very importantly.
Could this be too much for even Faceless Corruptor to fight back against?
The end begins.
Well, I don't think it's all that bad, because the Faceless can take value trade against the Tol'Vir. He can still take him the second half, and he's still got one charge of Spear active.
I think it just about gets there.
Uh-huh. It lines up awkwardly, though, because he, I think, can't take down the Sethic. Or, wait, one sec. Wait, he can.
He can, yeah, he's got a full clear here, I think.
As long as he attacks first and transforms a rush.
Oh, no, you're right. Sorry, he is one off being able to clear everything. One attack off.
No, this works out perfectly. Yeah, then weapon into
goes
this.
for the attack second.
Yeah. Good order spotted from SamuelTsao. It's a little bit wonky there.
Even with good
Even
trade
able
there.
to clear off the Psychopomp. It's huge.
Yeah, very nicely done by SamuelTsao. Not so much by myself there, but either way you frame it, SamuelTsao has beaten down the early push now from Shaxy, and that is not game-winning in its own right, but it's got to be said, historically, against any kind of combo priest deck similar to this one, that is generally good enough to take the game.
For sure. Especially since SamuelTsao is sitting on the Scavenger's Ingenuity, which will guarantee draw him Diving Griffin, can help answer any minion that Shaxy puts onto the board. Just going for the Amet here, hoping by some miracle that SamuelTsao doesn't respect it, but oh my gosh, what an answer.
Yeah, absolutely huge. Fey-Wing plus the Corrosive Breath. It means not only does he clear off the Amet, he's still far ahead on board. And then next turn, he's got the Scavenger's Ingenuity, 50% chance to draw Zixor Prime with 6/6 rushes. And at that point, the game is well and truly over.
You're right, it is not guaranteed Diving Griffin because the better card is there. See a Doomsayer-sized Nat Pagel, but I think we're going to see the Sun Reaver Spy.
I have trained for days.
Potentially now we're looking at Diving Griffin actually being the better option, just because it allows him the immediate clear, as while I said it was the previous push that seemed to be the last one, this one, I think, for Shaxy, is the final best chance he has to take this.
Land the 50, but you could still
Yeah.
hit Leok or
Or
a nice
Huffer.
trade.
Both of them allow him to clear it off and keep some semblance of board control.
You could also just see Bone Wraith and Chill, but I hate that out of the three options we were talking about. As long as he's curing, it's gonna be fine.
I also hate that. Agreed. There's no chance of him dying because Divine Spirit isn't in the deck before, so it's just about wrestling board control as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, even though he'll have to leave up the Sun Reaver Spy, it's all good if he ends up with Zix or this.
Okay, I guess preserving his minions here is fairly valuable. But I think it was that if he got the, the Leok, he was able to take a nice clean trade anyway and keep his
Right.
4-1 healthier. And even if he got Misha, that's a taunt anyway that protects his other minions.
A little bit fishy, but in any case, SamuelTsao had no chance of being threatened in this spot. Even if Shaxy goes for a Psyche split here, that's nothing in the face of 4 6/6 rushes. Can reborn his minion and then copy that. That'd be
That's
the best
true.
spot.
Huh. It did look pretty good. I mean, I guess if he's not going for the Psych split this turn, then...
Yeah. Does not appear to. But guess what? 6 health lines up badly against Derek.
And to be honest, for Shaxy, probably should have guessed this, because if he had Diving Griffin, he would have played it, right?
I mean,
yeah.
let's be fair, there was no good play for Shaxy
Right.
there.
That's true. That is
Nothing beats this.
true. Yeah. And with no avenue to victory anymore, Shaxy throws it down. Game 5 Chia, as SamuelTsao's life in Hearthstone Grandmasters comes down to this. Right from the start, he has had his backdrop that we sent him at the worst possible angle. It covers nothing, and yet still takes up plenty of real estate in the room. Who even knows why? He's now hanging his jumpers on it as well, because he doesn't have enough space in the rest of his room. But even with that being peak SamuelTsao, I find myself rooting for him here in this final game. I just can't choose. I want Dawn to stay in. I want SamuelTsao to stay in. I want everyone to be happy, Gia.
Oh, wow. How diplomatic, Derek. I'll just be the one out here calling this priest deck garbage, and I'm sticking by that. To be fair, I also hated on SamuelTsao's Mage Bring the other week big time. I also think that was garbage. But this priest deck, I don't even see how the high roll comes together in a meta where people play removal and people play minions and weapons.
To be fair, I will say, I think against a slightly more average curve there from the Highlander Hunter, that could very nearly have get the job done. I think it had to be,
Okay.
Outside of Zephyrus, which could, I guess, just on its own pull apart the game plan with the Shadow Word Pain or Silence or whatever. The curve of Spear into the Faceless Corruptor was the absolute dream against this priest deck, because it's immediate removal at all points. It's so difficult to stick anything against that.
To be fair, though, Shaxy also hit a very dream start. He had
That's true.
the double 12 years power word shield and a Sethic on top of all of that. I don't know.
Oh.
We'll see the final test. Can it get there versus Druid? We think this is its best shot because Druid takes a while to get online. But will Shaxy be able to save Dawn? Or will he potentially beat SamuelTsao's ticket to staying in GM?
Oh, my heart is racing, Gia. And as Shaxy decides on his starting mulligan, Sethic Veilweaver is not something I was super expecting, but I guess at the very least, it is a 2-drop, of which there are not that many in the deck.
Fair. It's the 2 Sethics, the Kulturan, one of, and the double 12 years. And if there's one thing I'm sure of, this deck needs to get on board immediately.
Oh, and imagine, because High Priest Amit can come down, the Faceless Rager can get the same health as High Priest Amit because of the effect. What a combo.
redundancy.
Okay. Serious time. The first clear is there for SamuelTsao. Obviously what you want against this deck. But even having said that, Gia, you can only remove as this druid for so long. With 0 hard removal, be it single target or AoE in the deck, he has to get his own game plan going. And it's going to have to be right now.
Yeah, I mean, if we were going to talk about how Priest out a win against Druid, it does involve Sethic generating Holy Nova
Yep.
or Soul Mirror, for example. But now a Sethic is down, and I like that Shaxy follows up with the card that isn't Sethic. And of course, not the one with
SamuelTsao.
1 health.
Right, again presented with a clear here in Crystal Power, Hero Power. It's not bad, and he could then just go for Overgrowth on the following turn. But, I don't know. I mean, I was going to say he has to start ramping. What is he even ramping to quite yet? He doesn't have any payoff.
I would say he's ramping into flexibility. For example, he unlocks more mana to go for Rising Winds for card draw,
Yeah.
and then follow up from there. I get scared of the Power Infusion coming down on curve, which is a possibility. And if we're talking about refill for Shaxy, it's less likely because it's just the Ahmet, which is the ideal play on this mana,
Right.
but it's there, and SamuelTsao is getting punished.
And just look at this for SamuelTsao, Gia. It is so heartbreaking. He knows how badly this is going and how bad this matchup must be. Even with Overflow off the top, he now has some payoff. It's looking very, very scary.
Oh, look at Shaxy's play. He can Sethic, go up to 7, and then Power Word Shield generation. He can go Faceless Rager.
Better than that, he can go Power Word Shield Psychopomp for 3 9 health minions.
I wonder.
I'm liking getting the Sethic on board, actually. Just more
Really?
value, right?
I guess, because the only thing you're afraid of now is a huge pop-off turn with the exotic Mount Seller on the other side. So
Right.
how do you best play around that?
It's also worth noting that the Faceless Rager is more attack stats. I think that's very
True.
relevant in the matchup.
Yeah.
And you see Shaxy going about it in this order, despite that possibility to get 9 health on the Sethic, because he wants the
Yeah.
generation. I really like this.
Fair enough. 3 minions, all of which must be removed, but no answer to even a single one of them from SamuelTsao.
And no development. You could see him start fishing for Glowfly with his fungal fortunes. But even then, Shaxy can trade away at least 3 without any problems.
It's a hand that is absolutely begging for a Mount Seller. If he can find this for the next turn, I think we actually have a game on our hands.
Yeah, there's a way back. This is combo priest, but there's no inner fire to hand just yet. There's no way to double the health total, so we're not looking at true OTKs. We're looking at these mid-range minions hoping to connect over several turns. SamuelTsao has a bit of time left. What? Oh my gosh!
What do you
Power
even go
infusion,
for
inner fire.
here? Yeah.
That is just 15 attack on this
my
Ahmet.
God.
That's lights out for SamuelTsao. Okay.
Reborn as well, just in case you needed it.
What a top deck for Shaxy! Oh man, it hurts to watch SamuelTsao's expression, but even if this is a Mount Seller off the top,
Yeah.
imagining a way that it can stick. And there's even a Shadow Word Death in hand for the taunt. Okay, so he
Okay,
needs
if he
several
can
taunts,
get-
right?
5 Iron Fur Grizzlies. There's a hope. There's the slightest glimmer here for SamuelTsao.
He's gotta go! There's lots of spells
yes.
to be played. And you know what? If he manages to get enough taunts, he can stick a Soul of the Forest behind this.
Yep.
And if he top decks Savage Roar, we're just looking at a counter lethal on the other end.
None of these
How
are doing it so
many
far.
taunts? Ah, just one taunt. Mount Seller dies to the Shadow or Death in hand.
Exactly. He can't play around that though. It's a generated card.
Just needs no more chances at. Okay, couple more chances. No Iron Bark drawn.
Fog Beam Power of the Wild is his best shot. He can go for it on the 2/7 in case he hits Griffin.
Griffins. Okay, there's a Griffin. Never mind. But that is just one taunt, unless this fog beam generates something else. Is he alive? No, he's not, right? Because wait, yeah, Psyche split on the side trades into the Silverback Patriarch. Death on the
No, it's
Mount-
+1/+2. It's not
Oh, is
+2
it?
attack. It's only +1 attack.
Oh, so he's alive?
He can go for copying one of the opposing minions. Does that give him anything? None of them have rush.
If he thinks SamuelTsao has more removal, he could fish with Mind Visions.
Sure.
So look for 2 damage on the Silverback Patriarch. Gets the news it's not there.
Oh my
The
god.
sticking point is he can still just death the Mount Seller and go for Psycho Pump.
He can still generate spells, of course, as well off of the Sethic. Maybe that gets him there.
Correct. I think you're always going to play Shadow Word Death here.
Yes.
And so he starts with that. The
I
Psycho
mean, unless, of
Pump.
course, he wants to trade in, because he could go for Psych Split on his own guy or on the other Mount Seller.
This seems unnecessarily risky towards a Savage Roar on the other end. How much damage is that? The
I think
difference
that's
between...
Savage Roar for the game.
And there's an overflow to draw it? What? I mean, he's gotta draw, right? There's no way to clear both of the Ahmets?
15 damage on board. 12 damage would be gained from the Savage Roar. Even with a Hero
Moonfire?
Power and a
Yeah.
Moonfire, it's
Yeah.
not quite lethal.
So he trades down instead? Okay, this does get rid of both Ahmets by mistake. With the poisonous, it's a very big
Oh my
deal.
god. But he gets the other one as full health? This was never a clear.
Time waits for no one.
The Reborn's too much.
Yeah, it gets rid of
SamuelTsao just forgot about it.
It's rid of the high attack minions, but
Yeah.
he's not able to develop on the backswing.
Yeah.
That was ever so close there. But the apotheoses close this out.
Oh. SamuelTsao at the end. It's a heartbreaking way to go out, forgetting how the Amit works with Reborn. But in the end, Shaxy with his priest at the final moment takes the win. SamuelTsao, heartbreakingly, this is our goodbye to him from Hearthstone Grandmasters. He could try and qualify again through the Masters Tours, but for the moment at least, this is the end of his run. And while it is heartbreak for SamuelTsao, Gia, Dawn, it must be elation for him. He has survived to fight for at least another week.
Whew. I needed to take a much bigger breath than that because that was just so tense up until the end there. SamuelTsao, had he gone for the overflow, could have drawn Savage Roar, but it was still that little bit short of lethal.
Yeah.
I have to go back and look at it because both Moonfires were there, but what a decisively painful way to go out with the Ahmet on curve. We saw him respecting and removing the minions to make sure that the power infusion couldn't come down on curve, but he got the absolute worst minion that Shaxy could play for him right there on the backswing, and it was not enough, but it was such a valiant effort, and that does mean we have both our divisions locked up.
We do indeed. We can take a look at the standings once those are ready to see how things have all shaken out. But we do, of course, sadly have our two Grandmasters who we are not going to be seeing next season. In Staz down at the bottom and SamuelTsao to be joining him. I believe the two players that we have in the relegation bracket for Division B are going to be Frosty and Dawn now down towards the bottom. But, man, Gia, what a journey it has been to get here to the end of round robin.
Yeah, 7 weeks of absolute madness. We've seen so many ups and downs for these players. We've seen so many brilliant plays. We've seen madness from the decks that they've been bringing, the box mage from SamuelTsao himself, and the combo priest from Shaxy. We've
Yep.
seen Savage Roar lethals on turn 4. We've seen Demon Hunter absolute blowouts. And man, I've just had a ton of fun. But it's still really painful that we get here to that part where relegation is guaranteed.
Yeah, it is sad stuff indeed. But we, of course, have a lot to look forward to next week. Taking a look at the standings now, we can see who is going to be joining us for playoffs. We need to find out who of those 8 players it will be. Top 6 of Division A will be joining us there. Glory, Alutemu, Surrender, Rivius, Possessi, and Chonsu. 3 Japanese players, 3 South Korean players, clearly demonstrating themselves to be at the cutting edge of APAC Hearthstone. Blitzchung, Shaxy, Tyler, and Tom60229, 2 of those players will be joining them after we play an off-stream play-ins match between where they just play first plays 4th, second plays 3rd. The winner of each match will be joining us in the top 8. As I said, it will be off-stream, but still recorded so you can catch it on the YouTube channel. But then the 7th and 8th of Division A and 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th for Division B, it's a much sadder story, Gia.
That's right. As you did mention, SamuelTsao and Staz have no more shots to get in, but if Staz's attitude is any indication, that is not the last we'll be seeing from him. Already on the grind to get back in the Masters Tour system. I do believe SamuelTsao has what it takes to claw his way back into GM, but for now, it's all eyes on Frosty, Dawn, Flurry, and Kin because they'll be playing that relegation bracket 1 match each day throughout next weekend to determine who is going to be in that 3rd slot for relegation. For Dawn, it's only 1 shot to save himself.
It is 1 final shot, but we can take a look at the playoffs bracket to see how next weekend is going to be looking. It is going to be 2 brackets, I believe, of course, with Glory having taken a free win here through being the 1st seed. He will be waiting in the wings for either Rivius or Possessi. And then down in the elimination match, the player who qualifies through from Division B, as I mentioned, still yet to be decided, does start off with an automatic loss. So it's a little bit harder for them to get through to being our player in the global finals, but they still have a good shot at it, Gia.
You already can see the implications of finishing well in Swiss, finally leading up to the playoffs, how much of a difference it makes because Glory has losses to take and just 1 win that he needs to actually qualify through to the next stage of playoffs. Whereas if you qualify through Division B, it's only 1 loss you can get before you're out.
And then, of course, the other player who got a bye going in is Alutemu, the 2 old-school Japanese players showing they've got what it takes. But then Surrender and Chonsu, I think, both showing very good stuff at the moment. Chonsu, I believe, despite us previously having some gripes with his gameplay, this week played very strong Hearthstone. I believe he's number 2 legend on ladder at the moment, I think, which is a good indication of why he was playing some very strong Hearthstone this week, putting in the work, and it is showing off. I can't wait to see how he performs next week.
That's right. Despite him making it to playoffs, I'm sure you never feel too good about making it just sliding in at the bottom slots there. I think Chonsu knows and that he has what it takes to be higher than 6th seed in a bracket and want to see him play at his best Hearthstone. But it's going to be a huge challenge to face Surrender, who's a player that had an uncharacteristically bad record at the start. But of course, as the sample size evened out, we did get to see Surrender's consistency shine through, still making it to the top 4 division.
Yeah, very, very strong performance from all of those guys. Of course, we do also have, sadly, the elimination bracket that will have to take place over the course of next weekend. We'll be playing 1 game each day because we need to see who will be sadly relegating out alongside both SamuelTsao and Staz down at the bottom. As you can see here, our Division A 7th and 8th players will be Kin and Flurry fighting it out first, and then soon after to be joined by Dawn and then Frosty.
That is true. I think Frosty is the one that is 5th seed, despite having a very, very slow start. His win over Tyler made all the difference when you're able to have that David and Goliath relationship. You really do reap the rewards because he has twice as many chances to take a win than Dawn, and Dawn has 1 chance to stay in GM. If not, we could be saying goodbye to him. And no matter who it is that ends up being relegated next week, it's going to be painful. This weekend was hard enough, Derek. We have to say goodbye to another player.
Yeah, it's really, really heartbreaking stuff. And like you said, for Dawn and for Frosty, while they got so close to being relegated automatically, and there is a bit of a breather for them before next week. It is far from delighted they will be feeling quite yet. They just need to secure themselves that one more point, because no matter who it is, out of Dawn and Frosty from Division B, Kin or Flurry from Division A, I think all are very worthy competitors here in Grandmasters. But that, of course, all has to come next week, Gia. We first of all have to find out what is happening across the pond. At least for you, it's here on this side of the pond. For me, with Europe coming up next with Raven and Sottle to find out who will be relegating out and who we will be seeing in playoffs for them. And then, of course, America's thereafter with Frodan and Doa. So unless you have anything else to mention, Gia, I am going to sign us off for the weekend.
Well, I am just going to enjoy my dinner. It is not corn tuna, but I need a break after all of this emotional Hearthstone. Can't wait to see what's going on in the other regions and get ready for playoffs next week. It's all been leading up to this.
Oh, yes. Very exciting stuff. Can't wait to see who will be joining us at the global final. So thank you so much for watching us this weekend. We will see you next week for the playoffs and the final relegation bracket for APAC. But for now, the final week of round robin for Europe and Americas. Enjoy.